Welcome to Living the Spiral. This is a place to slow down, take a breath, and listen to the rhythms moving through your life. Here we explore astrology, human design, the I Ching, and elemental ancestral wheels of the year from cultures around the world. These are old maps and living languages that help us sense where we are in time, what is asking to unfold, and how we belong to something far larger than any single moment. In each episode, we trace patterns in the sky and in the body. We weave myth with lived experience, intuition with practice, and the personal with the collective. Living the Spiral is about learning how to move with change instead of pushing against it. About meeting transitions with curiosity, integrating polarities, and remembering that every season carries its own powerful wisdom. When you begin to listen to the cycles, life starts to feel more connected, more meaningful, and more alive. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is Living the Spiral podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to Living the Spiral. This is a bonus episode about the astrology and human design of 2026 that I'm calling The End of Drifting. And Happy New Year. Happy official launch into the new year. Today that I'm recording is Tuesday, January 6th, which is a Venus Cazimi. Venus is in the heart of the sun today, meaning that there's a certain clarification around values and what makes us feel alive and in love. And I'm definitely feeling that today. I wasn't going to be doing a year ahead forecast, but over the past couple of days with all of this Capricorn energy with Venus, Mars, and the Sun, and Mercury all in Capricorn, there's kind of been a structure that my mind has been going through, and I've received a lot of downloads about how the next, the upcoming year is coming through. So I decided to add to the fray. This year, I definitely didn't hit the ground running on January 1st. And so if you've ever felt weird making big resolutions on January 1st, you're definitely not alone. You probably know that by now. But for me this year, I started out with a little bit of a stomach bug. So that kind of put me and my family into a place of staying inward when I might have been trying to trampolinium the way out of Christmas break. But instead, it was a lot of building forts in the living room and a lot of ritual, a lot of rest, and a lot of reading. I've been doing a ritual where I've written down 13 things that I will wish to come true in 2026, and I wrote them down on the solstice and have been burning one each day until the final one is left, and then that final one goes on the altar. So it's a really cool ritual that's involved fire every single day since the solstice, and it's been a really beautiful practice to do with my loved ones. And I've been reading a lot. I'm so deeply appreciative and in awe of all of the insights that so many of my astrology and human design colleagues have been dropping about the year ahead. So I've definitely been wandering around the house in my PJs with one earbud in, listening to someone's perspective on 2026. And so a week into 2026, I realized I had to release my own. So listen on if you still have space in your brain for another year ahead report. And if by this point in the year you've already been oversaturated with opinions on what's going to happen in 2026, perspectives, downloads, transmissions, totally get it. You can skip this one or come back to it later in the year. So, despite how climate change has delivered not a single drop of snow to my usual winter wonderland of Santa Fe, it's still the inward-focused season of winter. So if you're feeling emotionally toasted from the recent holiday social scene and family scene, and these long nights are keeping you cozy in bed longer than usual, I'd say do not worry. It is still winter time. So there's a little energy to be found in the skies as we start off January. In recent years past, we have started the year with retrograding planets, with Mercury retrogrades and Mars retrogrades. And this year we are starting the year with a lack of retrograding planets. Most planets are in forward direct motion. And then, like I mentioned, we're also pretty blessed with this stellium of planets and a couple of these cazemis, these conjunctions with the sun in Capricorn. And that's happening this week of Monday, January 5th. There's a Mars cazimi, there's a Venus Mars conjunction, and there's a Venus cazimi. And so those clarifying moments and these coming together of these close planets in Capricorn could be really great for ambitious resolution setting. I think there's been a lot of discourse about like, oh, is it the new year or is it not? Is there a new year in March, in the Aries equinox, or is the new year actually in, the witch's new year in October, November, when it's going into the darkness? Is that the new year? And I think ultimately what we can agree on is that there is not a universally agreed upon new year, and that setting a new beginning at any given moment, if it feels right for you, is completely palpable. But there are certain times in the year when New Year makes sense. And despite all of the aggression against January 1st, Gregorian New Year being not a great time for New Year's resolutions, I do feel that with all these planets in Capricorn, and when the sun enters Capricorn, there is a certain amount of structuring that we naturally want to do. And so resolutions they don't mean get off your butt and go to the gym right now, but maybe they mean clarifying a schedule, writing out your ideas and goals and possibilities for the year ahead, and making a plan for how that can unfold in a more natural way. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole New Year's conversation that seems to be happening in the astrological space, of almost just like them fighting words about like, when is the actual New Year supposed to be? Oh, it's not January, it's definitely March. It's like, no, this is one type of New Year, which is starting slow and methodical and structured. It's like the mountain sea goat Capricorn climbing up the mountain. Creature is not running most of the time, not hopping, sometimes kind of doing amazing feats of anti-gravity as it climbs the mountain, but most of the time it's just one foot in front of the other, taking a look around, finding inner resolve to keep going up a very harsh cliff to reach the top of the mountain. So I do think that the resolutions that we're talking about in January are focused, are strategic, and are not necessarily running out to get started in the outer world. So, with that said, I'd still advise to take the next month slow. January of 2026, I'd say, is a great time to catch up on your beauty rest, to do some journaling, some calendaring, getting together with family, some vision boarding, getting people together who you want to align with for the year and seeing how they're feeling internally about what's coming, doing some intention setting, and even binging some TV. I just binged all 6 episodes of Heated Rivalry, the wonderful queer hockey show, sexy show that everyone's talking about, and I took some time away from my intention setting to just get into that love story. So whatever you need to do over January, whatever hibernation nutrients you need from that next Netflix and chill session, get them now, because 2026, I would say, will be lighting a match in February, and we're not going to be able to blow that match out for a good long while after February. So take January to kind of cram your wrist if you can, and peace out a little bit, and plan. Don't like put your head in the sand, but allow it to be a little bit slower perhaps than you might normally. Astrologically, generally, I'll say the long and short of it, 2026 is marking a convergence of some really long cycles that are coming together. We have multiple outer planets changing signs, elemental emphasis shifts into fire and air from earth and water, and there is a rare harmonic geometry that's forming across the sky in a couple of configurations that are kind of promising, I will say. But none of these are subtle transits. They are all describing deep collective weather patterns that shape the overculture, subcultures, they shape systems, and they shape our personal lives all at the same time. I think we can all feel it already at this point in the year. This is the kind of year where stories are reorganizing themselves and where drifting becomes less comfortable, because the past several years we've had a lot of water and earth energy, a lot of Pisces energy of kind of merging into the collective primordial soup. And this year, with a lot of planets moving into fire and air for the first time in a while, it's going to be a lot more fiery and alive. So, coincidentally or not, this year also opens in February into the fire horse year in the Chinese zodiac. And this fire horse is associated with vitality and momentum and movement that resists containment. You can really just close your eyes and imagine a wild stallion riding across the plains with its, mane and tail made of fire. It's a pretty striking visual that, like, even without AI, I think a lot of us could probably just see in our mind's eye this fire horse energy. And fire horse years, the last one was 1966, in the 12-year cycle, and of the different animals in the 60-year cycle when you include the elements in the Chinese zodiac. So fire horse years accelerate what has been gathering charge and emphasis beneath the surface. So moving from a snake year where there's a lot of collecting of, like, the energy that's grounded in the waters and the earth, it's now bringing that up, lighting the match, and seeing how fast that fire can move. These years tend to bring a sense that the gate is open, the floodgates are open and energy wants to run. So at the same time, human design is offering us a parallel lens and showing how desire and leadership, presence, skill, and commitment are all being activated at a structural level as the themes of this year. And so those are coming from a lot of where the planets are transiting through which gates. We have a lot of leadership gates, skill-based gates, presence with the immediate moment-based gates. And we'll talk more about the human design of the year ahead as well in this, mostly about where the outer planets are hanging out, which signs and which gates. So, 2026 has been a year that astrologers have been watching for a long time. There was an astrologer, a French astrologer named André Barbeau, or Barbeau, pardon my French, but he described this phase of the Saturn-Neptune cycle, with Saturn and Neptune coming together in Aries, as a moment when a new world era reaches viable expression, visible expression, and pressures humanity toward coordination and solidarity and reorganization instead of fragmentation. So in the present moment, where we are here in 2026 with that prediction from years ago, there's a certain potency to it that I've seen a lot of astrologers picking up on, the Barbeau theories of kind of this new age when it comes to this Saturn Neptune cycle, and how the outer planetary configurations are creating some very, very rare harmonic configurations. So, with a lot of fire, like kind of striking the match, a lot of that imagery that I'm talking about, I think it could be easy to get your heckles up a little bit in the very beginning of this episode. So, I'd say just shake your hands out, shake your shoulders, take a little moment wherever you are, as long as it's in a safe place, to just take a few breaths, few deep inhales through the nose and sighs out, moving your fingers and your toes around, just knowing that whatever comes through today, some of it might feel a little bit intimidating because of how fast a lot of these words are associated in our head. Fire and air, even just those two elements, I think, bring up a certain quality of being in our bodies. Whereas earth and water are kind of like, oh yeah, floating. I could like lay on that. And yes, there is this change happening, but there are also some unforeseen, really interesting configurations that can bring a little bit of hope. And I think it's important to just, take what resonates with you from this reading and leave the rest, and know that there are practices that I'm working on this year. For me, 2026 is going to be a year of a lot less downloading. For the past several years, I have been merging and consolidating and collaborating and just bringing together a lot of these different systems, a lot of words and a lot of philosophies, a lot of ancestral wisdoms, and kind of compiling them into a tome, into a resource library for myself and for others. And so in 2026, I really aim to be less data driven, less information heavy. And I'm grateful that all of that, all of the data that I've accumulated and learned from so many wise people over the past several years has become a foundation and a backbone to the work that I'm bringing to the world. But I'm noticing a very distinct shift in my body towards what is important about that, why learn these things, why astrology, why human design, why the 5 element cycle, why any of these things. And for me, it's always been about learning how to live in a more embodied and relational way with the earth, with our animal kin, with our plant kin, and with other humans and beings that live around us currently and in the past and in the future. So this interrelational web of being, I think that astrology and human design and these different systems are beautiful maps for that territory, but they're not the territory, as I've said before. And I think it's just really important to emphasize that there can be a certain beauty in taking in a lot of information and prediction, but also taking that alongside with practices of slowing down, of media, having a media diet, taking some time away from information, touching grass, as they say, hugging a tree, finding a breath practice, a qigong or yoga, whatever, a slow, intentional practice that helps build the qi or prana or energy life force in your body. I think those are probably the most top of mind things that I would say for working through 2020 practices that have been passed down to us, not just the information. So that's my little or large disclaimer of sorts that I would say you can always decide to just disregard or pause any information if it's feeling like something that is intimidating. But for me, I like the practice of coupling predictions, coupling practices of divination or of looking at patterns in the stars with practices of integrating that into the body and the earth. So I will be putting out a few more episodes that are more specifically about that. I'll be putting out a 2026 horoscope for each rising sign, as well as, some articles about ways to make it through 2026 in an embodied way, in a communal embodied way. So look out for those. But for now, we'll just get through this guided walk through the astrology and human design of 2026, just as a map of opportunities and a map of turning points and a map of points of that feel like crisis or pressures that could turn into opportunities. So know that this is a year that rewards embodiment, connection to your own heart, your own body, and the earth and other people. It rewards preparation and also authorship, ownership of your own story. So, not going to say this year is going to be easy. It's definitely a lot of changing of the guard. But once we hold on to those reins of the fire horse and it starts to move, we might realize we know how to ride, kind of like riding a bike more than we thought we did at one point. So getting into it. I'm not going to go month by month exactly. I'm just going to go kind of based on the major transits of each season. But starting off, like I mentioned, this year, January is the staging ground. It's a powerful time this month to prepare ourselves as we lead up into a massive year, astrologically speaking. And I've hinted at that, but you'll see why. Basically, Capricorn season that it was from the solstice on December 21st till January 21st is a pragmatic season that favors planning and building infrastructure and kind of sober assessments about where we truly stand, like getting kind of real with ourselves. I have lots of Capricorns in my life and they're all quite real, I will say. So it's that time to get real with your inner truths. And this time in Capricorn, Mercury, Mars, and Venus are all there with the sun to start the year. So it's really emphasizing a theme of getting your feet on the ground, touching the earth. Capricorn is a cardinal earth sign. So it's really, I'd say, regardless of where you are, whether it's snowy or whether it's hot, I'd say try to get outside during January as much as you can to connect with earth energy. It's a really beautiful thing to do during any earth sign season, but sometimes Capricorn season being in the winter gets a little left out from that earth connection, but the earth is beautiful this time of year, even if it's not as alive as in the summer. So get out there, get outside, and connect with that grounded Capricorn energy. And, I would say let's think about January as a time of taking a hot shower and brushing our teeth, brushing our hair, like putting the lotion on, and packing our bags before the timeline speeds up and we have to jump on the saddle of the fire horse and remember how to ride. So that, that's January. Moving into February, February is the ignition point of 2026. The vibe shifts hard in mid-February, especially. So if you're listening to this, in early January or mid-January, I'd say to still give yourself a full month of leaning into the Capricornian realms of self-care, which are planning and structure and grounding, right? But February 17th, 2026 rings in the Lunar New Year. So that's when the fire horse actually arrives and we wave a beauty pageant goodbye to the wood snake year. And February 17th also is a solar eclipse in Aquarius. It is the first eclipse in the sign of the water bearer for 9 years and the first north node eclipse in Aquarius for 18 years. And it's the first time an eclipse has coincided with the Lunar New Year since 2009. So 2009 was the year of the Earth Ox. Now we're in the year of the Fire Horse. But there are solar eclipses on Lunar New Year sometimes because the Lunar New Year is always on a new moon and a solar eclipse is always on a new moon. And so depending on the cycles of the nodes and the eclipses, it does happen, and I'm curious if anyone out there has a deep understanding or curiosity or wisdom about the coinciding of eclipses with the Lunar New Year from a Chinese or Thai or Asian perspective of any kind, what that might mean there. For me, I see a solar eclipse landing on Lunar New Year as a powerful and potent thing because it really stacks the biggest collective reset ritual of the majority of the world. The Lunar New Year is celebrated in a large portion of the world's population, and far more than the Gregorian New Year in some ways, historically. And there's also this celestial reset, this solar eclipse in a new sign. And then so it makes this new beginning energy really feel amplified and potentially more unpredictable because eclipses have a wide range of unpredictable mythology in many different cultures. So the solar eclipse on February 17th on the Lunar New Year of the fire horse is square Uranus in Taurus. And Uranus is just wrapping up its time in Taurus. So for the past 7 years, Uranus has been transiting through the sign of the bull, kind of like a bull in a china shop kind of metaphor. Uranus shakes things up and is like a lightning bolt or a velociraptor. There was a quote about that from Tegan West, who is Altar of Stars podcast. I was listening to her describe Uranus as a velociraptor in Jurassic Park, and I felt like that tracks. That really checks out. And definitely Uranus and Taurus was like bull and china shop energy for the last 7 years, kind of shaking up the things that we normally find to be stable and comforting. And so with the eclipse squaring Uranus in the last degrees of Taurus, there's a chance for some really bold pivots, unexpected news, and truly clean breaks from stale systems to happen on that day or within that eclipse portal, which lasts 2 weeks from February 17th into early March. So at this first eclipse of the year, Uranus is about to enter Gemini, and it's at the very end of Taurus. So it's kind of like a pressure valve that is releasing after kind of the bull being contained in the china shop or in like the tea party room, it's like bull finally kind of like breaks out the window and starts to fly. Like something completely different happening there. Themes with Taurus relate to finance and resources, natural resources and financial resources, and kind of our shared collective values. So, with the solar eclipse in Aquarius squaring that, some radical new ideas can be really put into some practical real world applications. And that especially might be concerning digital infrastructure, natural resources like land and oil, and societal structures that we have been comfortable in for quite some time, but that have been shaken up for the past 7 years. And this is just a kind of tension point between like the new world and what we have been having a hard time letting go of as the world shifts and changes. So the Lunar New Year new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius will be visible from Antarctica only, so it is not going to be visible from the rest of the world, maybe it's southern part of South Africa and Antarctica, but it's definitely going to pack a punch as we enter the Lunar New Year. And again, leave in the comments on Substack at livingthespiral.com or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you have any insights about the Lunar New Year, the Chinese New Year coinciding with eclipses, I'd just love to hear some takes on that. And then February continues on. The 17th is a big day, but then we kind of move a few days later. Excuse me. Then we move a few days later to what I would say many people are calling the main event of 2026, which is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries, which is this meetup of the planet of structure, the lord of time and karma, with the planet of dissolution, the lord of the sea, Poseidon. The two of these kind of opposing energetic planets and gods are meeting up at the first degree of the entire zodiac. And so that's no small thing. And so Saturn re-enters Aries on February 13th, 2026, and then on February 20th, Saturn and Neptune are embracing at that 0 point of Aries. And this is truly an initiation degree. Aries, the sign of Aries, the ram is a cardinal fire sign, so it represents a catalyst, kind of a match being struck, that first spark, the first breath of air that an infant takes when it enters the world, the first sprout that comes up of the ground from the seed. And Saturn there is really bringing ideas of consequence and commitment and a need for boundaries and a need for structure to that fresh air energy. And then Neptune meeting there is bringing idealism, big dream energy, and the dissolving of old forms. So when they meet together, there will be many, many hot takes on this conjunction. So you won't be able to miss them, even if you don't follow astrologers. I promise. It's a big deal. So the question to ask here is, what dream of mine is worth becoming deeply disciplined for? Saturn is discipline. Saturn is being a disciple of things that are real and tangible that you can practice. And Neptune is dreams. It can also be delusions and illusions, but I'd say that bringing together a notion of like your biggest potential dream for a new reality with the discipline that it takes, the discipleship that it takes to make that a reality in your own life. That is the biggest consideration here for February. And it's good to think about this before the date of February 20th, because as you know, there might be some shakeups with the eclipse season starting right before that, with the Lunar New Year, fire horse energy coming in. We might not know exactly what needs to be done, what needs to be studied, what needs to be dreamed until that very moment. But it's something to think about. What dream of mine is worth becoming deeply disciplined for? And how am I going to implement that discipline into 2026? So, I love thinking about the word disciplined as, it can sound like a very harsh word, like you're in trouble, discipline. I think in a lot of children's books, discipline is like what happens to you, the principal's office. But I think of disciplined when I look at the etymology of that word It's really deciding what you'd like to be a disciple of, a serious student of. And so I've said it before in a cheeky way on my Instagram bio and other places that I'm a disciple of cycles and I'm, being disciplined in my study of the ancient myths as they relate to the Earth's seasons and to our place in the universe is really what I have decided over the past several years to be disciplined about. And so there's lots of things to be a disciple of. There's people, there's philosophies, but there's larger things too, and you can make it up. But another question is just what are you ready to be a disciple of this year to help you achieve those big Neptunian dreams of the new reality, the new cycle of the zodiac? So that mid-February run is a real game changer week. Mark it on your calendars. February 17th, lunar eclipse in Aquarius with the Lunar New Year of the Fire Horse, and then February 20th, where Neptune and Saturn come together at 0 point of Aries. So, I cannot guarantee what will happen. These are just some questions to consider and to ponder. Lean into those vision board dreams harder than usual this year, but don't forget that there's going to need to, you'll need to show some receipts. You'll need to make a map of how you might achieve those beautiful images in your mind. And you know that whatever ripple effects ensue, they will definitely be downloading a new operating system into the collective psyche, with people doing this, whether consciously or not. Dreams of a new world and how to get there are kind of front and center right now, as we know that the ways of the past, as they are being revealed, are not sustainable. So it's time for something new. And you are just as much a part of it as anyone else. It takes all of us doing our own part and being our own authentic self to contribute to this new emergent world that we all dream of. So, the festivities of the Lunar New Year in Asia conclude with the Lantern Festival, which is on March 3rd. The Lunar New Year Festival, Spring Festival, is a 2-week festival that lasts from the new moon to the next full moon. And this year they both happen to be eclipses. So this March 3rd eclipse is a blood moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, and it's the last of the Virgo eclipses that we've had over the past year and a half, with the South Node being in Virgo. So we've been shedding themes, releasing themes of perfectionism and kind of embracing themes of surrendering to what's larger than us. And this is going to be the kind of the capstone on that eclipse cycle. And that lunar eclipse on March 3rd will be visible in North America, Australia, New Zealand, East Asia, and the Pacific. And it's the last full total lunar eclipse until 2029. So it'll be a powerful one as well. And I'll definitely be going into these as eclipse season approaches a little bit more in detail, but just know that the Lunar New Year celebration is capstoned by a solar eclipse in Aquarius and a lunar eclipse in Virgo. March is definitely continuing the energy of February in that way, just welcoming us into some unforeseen times. And, it's not necessarily going to be smooth sailing. But again, if you can just choose a direction, remember that you already know how to ride the horse. Even if you've never ridden it before, one of your ancestors probably have ridden a horse. And so tap into that knowing, that inner knowing of like, I can do hard things. I can handle volatility as it comes up. I have my practices. It's all a rhythm. Breathing is a rhythm. The pace of the horse trotting and running is a rhythm. So just hold on and tap into your own rhythm for February. I'd say keep that in mind. This year does have 2 eclipse seasons, and an eclipse season basically means that 2 to 3 eclipses happen within a 2-week window. So I just talked about the February 17th and March 3rd eclipse, and just wanted to mention that there's also an eclipse season between August 12th and 27th this year. So from Leo season into Virgo season. And so just marking those on the calendar for eclipse seasons because they are important moments to tap into the larger universal currents and kind of lean into that rhythm a little more, not trying to control exactly where the horse is going. So during eclipse windows, it can definitely feel like the lights are turned off and then on again, and the furniture in whatever room you are in has been rearranged, either subtly or dramatically. And I heard that metaphor once about what an eclipse feels like, and I'm like, yes, that is it. It's just like the normal light of the sun or moon is kind of blocked, and then once the light comes back, things feel like they've changed, and sometimes it's not all immediately obvious what has changed, but they have changed. And so, when the luminaries, the sun or the moon, go dark, what's really happening is we're able to see the shadows of the planetary bodies that we often take for granted. So we're either seeing the shadow of the moon or we're seeing the shadow of the earth. And because of this, we're able to understand shadows. We're able to understand the things that are normally hidden from us in a embodied and subtle way that's not like spelled out for us. And so because of this, eclipse seasons are times, I would say, to intentionally receive messages from the larger universe rather than trying to manifest or use your will to control the outcomes. And that just feels really important. There's a lot of manifesting associated with moons, with full moons and new moons especially. But eclipse seasons, I really do not do any ritual work or magic. It's really a time of rest and receiving what is being shown by the greater interconnections of the larger picture. So the 4 eclipses again, just to recap, are February 17th, which is a new moon annular solar eclipse in Aquarius on the Lunar New Year. March 3rd is a full moon total lunar eclipse in Virgo, and that's on the last day of the Lunar New Year, the Lantern Festival. Then August 12th is the next new moon total solar eclipse in Leo. And then August 27th is the full moon partial lunar eclipse in Pisces. So some years you are having all of the eclipses in the same 2 signs, the same 2 opposing signs. And other years they're shifting into a different nodal axis. So this year, the eclipses that we're having are all in 4 different signs. We have the Leo Aquarius axis that the nodes are shifting into. And then we have the Virgo Pisces axis where the nodes have been for the past little while and are shifting out of. And so it'll be the last of the Virgo Pisces eclipses and the first of the Aquarius Leo eclipses. And so what's happening here with this shift is that we are receiving messages of change about kind of our health and work and refinement and perfectionism. That's Virgo energy that we're shedding with that South Node release. And we're embracing or hungry for surrender to a higher merged spiritual reality in Pisces. And that's where we've been. But as we have Neptune and Saturn moving from Pisces into Aries, we also have the South Node moving out of Pisces as well into Aquarius. So it's shifting that energy of what we're hungry for from surrender and from drifting and kind of just being held by the water where we can float on our backs. We're shifting into more of a hunger for change in community and systems, like how the node-based systems work. The Aquarius archetype is the water bearer, that in Roman times, the Aquarii were a people that would carve canals from the main canal all the way out to the suburbs of Rome, essentially, making it possible for water to reach disparate regions. And so Aquarius is a connective sign that is all about connecting through things like the internet, connecting through the air, through frequencies. It is an air sign, but also connecting through these channels, which are also digging air into the ground and allowing water to flow. And so it's creating channels and interconnection between different systems and different communities. So that is a big shift from Pisces into Aquarius with the North Node. And those eclipses will highlight that shift. And then the South Node is moving from Virgo, which is about refinement, discipline, and discipleship in its own way, discernment, kind of sorting ripe from rotten, and shedding like an overemphasis on that, on to control and perfectionism. And then we're moving to a desire to kind of shed the shadow sides of Leo, which are pride, and emphasis on the individual. So the North Node moving into Aquarius is more focused on the collective, like the circulatory system, and the South Node in Leo would be releasing and shedding themes of an over-attachment to our ego, an over-attachment to our own individual creative sovereignty at the expense of the collective. So it's really, really a year of changing focus as far as the collective desire. And these eclipses will definitely show us what that transition feels like. So again, along with these outer planets changing signs, we also have the eclipses being a shift as well between water, earth, and air, fire. So remember that eclipses are not meant to be feared. They definitely are not something some people don't want to go seek them out and go on a cruise and watch an eclipse. They'd rather stay inside and go inward and receive the messages that way. And I think that is completely legit. That's how I practice eclipse interaction, I guess. But you do you. I would say that there's a lot of perspectives here on this, but they're not necessarily to be feared. They're really just great times to release the reins a little bit, loosen up, surrender to the universe as it presents us with paths to clear up past patterns that have been holding us back from fulfillment in our lives. So lots going on there already. We're just in February. We then move into, I'll talk a little bit about Mercury retrogrades in 2026, and I'll bring this up now because from late February into late March, we have our first Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And so that's again emphasizing this shift of all of these planets out of Pisces, the nodes shifting into Aquarius from Pisces, and Neptune and Saturn moving into Aries from Pisces, kind of leaving a vacuum in Pisces. And then right as that happens, Mercury is going to be backtracking through Pisces to kind of help us maybe revision or rethink or rework and remember everything that has happened over the past several years in the realm of Pisces. And so Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It's representative of the fully composted soil that a sprout can come out of, that the seed can be incubated in. And it's representative of the oceanic qualities of no boundaries, of spiritual mergers, the primordial soup, the place where we are all one. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of planetary energy in Pisces for the past decade or so. And now that it's shifting away, this Mercury retrograde in Pisces could really bring up a great time to consciously remember old dreams, old grief, unfinished conversations. Really good time to write or to audio record yourself about themes relating to surrender as they relate to you. And I'd say be soft with yourself during that time. We've just gone through these massive shakeups, eclipse season, and we're going through, at the exact same time, we're going through this Aries Saturn conjunction, Neptune Saturn conjunction in Aries, and we have so much happening. And then the retrograde hits at the same time, and retrogrades function like course corrections or reconsiderations, revisions, edits to the larger story arc of this fast-moving year. And so with February carrying all of this energy and also the first Mercury retrograde, it's definitely a great time to consciously don't think of it as oh no, another bad thing is happening or another thing that I don't have capacity for, but really saying, no, retrograde is a time when I can do these rewords, redo, revise, rework, remember, and do that consciously. It's kind of the universe gifts us these times in the year when we can take a pause and not just plod forward ahead. So it's remembering at the exact same time as moving ahead with the astrology of this year. So it'll require a little bit of extra planning, which is what January is for. Working in the days of the week that you can have for yourself to reminisce and to think about where you've come from and partner that with active days of moving forward. I do have a free download on my new website at hearthandspiral.com that you can get that's about the planetary days of the week. And it's, yeah, a fun PDF that kind of gives you some somatic prompts and journaling exercises and that kind of thing for each day of the week as it relates to the planets. And, many of us know, some of you may not, that the planets are named after, or the days of the week are named after the planets. Saturday is Saturn's day, for example. Sunday is Sunday. Monday is Moon Day. And this goes back, to Roman times and before, and also into the Germanic and Nordic traditions and the gods there as well. So check out that download, hearthandspiral.com, and it might give you a sense of how you can organize your year with just different days in mind and what the energies are primed for during those days. So that something like a Mercury retrograde at the same time as a forward moving Aries conjunction can coexist in the same time frame. So finally, with the Mercury retrogrades, I will just say that all of them are in water this year. All of them are in water signs, and that's pretty typical that all Mercury retrogrades would be in the same element year by year. And they were all in fire last year, I believe. But this year, they're in Pisces in February, and then in Cancer in late June to late July, and then in Scorpio from late October to mid-November. And all of them are asking for a different kind of rewind and remembering, but they all do focus on our emotional and embodied perspectives how we think about our emotions and feelings. So the Cancer retrograde will bring home and family and emotional memory into a period of reworking. Your past might appear in an emotional way, and boundaries around care will become important. And then the Scorpio retrograde in the fall, in late October, really is all about the hidden underworld layer of trust and power dynamics and scorpionic type things that are surfacing to be reworked. And during that time, our minds might become a bit more investigative. That's associated with Scorpio, kind of like looking beneath the surface of things. So just remember that during these periods, Mercury retrograde is an invitation to repair and renegotiate and slow the mind enough to hear what has been skipping. So that is Mercury retrograde for the year. Again, the dates for that are in late February to late March, late June to late July, Mercury retrograde in Cancer. The first one was late in Pisces. And then late October to mid-November for the Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. So moving on beyond the retrogrades, we also have a Venus retrograde this year, and I'll talk about that at the end because it's not happening until the fall. And I'm kind of done with retrograde speak at this moment, but do know that any planet in retrograde is all about those those reworking, renegotiating, revisiting. All of the words are related to that. Mercury is more about communication and how we interact with others, and Venus is a relational renegotiation and matters surrounding what we value. So keep that in mind. But I wanted to move on to kind of a bigger, wider lens here for a moment, because a lot of the elements are shifting in this year's astrology. So it's a big sign change year. And we're moving by mid-year. All of the outer planets will have moved into new signs, which they dipped their toes into in 2025 and then retrograded back into their old signs. But now all of the outer planets, except for Pluto, who has already been kind of stationed in Aquarius for the past year. But we have Neptune re-entering Aries, a fire sign, on January 26th, which really begins a long Aries era that runs into the late 2030s. 2038 is when Neptune goes into Taurus. We have Saturn re-entering Aries after a short foray there in 2025, and that's on February 13th, 2026 until April 12th, 2028. And Saturn and Neptune I've talked about a little bit already, but both of them are meeting at 0 degrees of Aries, the first degree of the entire zodiac in that fire sign, so moving from water to fire. Then Uranus is coming back into Gemini, an air sign, on April 25th after its brief preview there in 2025. And Uranus will be in Gemini until May 22nd, 2033. So a good long while for Uranus there in that air sign. And then we have Jupiter entering Leo, another fire sign, on June 30th, 2026. And that will be until July 2027. Jupiter spends 1 year in each sign. And then we have Pluto again in Aquarius, an air sign, for 18 more years, which is continuing a long transformation of technology and networks and collective power dynamics. So Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, Pluto, all of the planets that are on the outer realms of our solar system are in air and fire signs. So we're migrating from heavy earth and water into fire and air, and we'll definitely feel a palpable shift in tone from the more like yin concentrated vibes of the past several years to a more yang focused energy. If we're looking at the yin and yang polarity of Taoism, that's yin is a lot more about earth and water, about what's happening underneath the surface, about kind of what's below the fold. The yin field is how my Qigong teacher talks about it. And yang is kind of the metallic strike that comes within that yin field. Yang is usually something that is more of a momentary action amidst a yin predisposition. You think about how much water and earth there is on this planet, and it's definitely dominant in some ways as far as how humans interact with these elements. But fire and air are equally as important, just a little bit more volatile, a little bit more hard to control, a little bit harder to see, perhaps. And so there's a little bit more of an unknown quality to these upcoming years. I think we are more familiar with water and land as humans. So we're moving to the action orientation of fire and air over the coming many years. And starting out, I'll just kind of go through the outer planets here, a little bit about each one, and talk about how that's going to affect the theme and the current of the year. Pluto in Aquarius through 2044. It's kind of like, Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and Aquarius is the sign of networks. So this is about the networked underworld and the underworld of networks. And I think we're definitely seeing that with the AI revolution. It's hard to avoid and hard to ignore. Some people have told me recently about the dead internet theory, where there are so many bots and so much AI generated content in order to artificially inflate revenues of big companies, that is what has taken over. And there's a minimal amount of human interaction on the internet at this point, actually, as of 2026. And it's a pretty interesting theory, considering the internet was filled with humans only a couple years ago. And, they're still there. But as far as the content we're being shown algorithmically, it is bot created. I think something like 50% of the music on Spotify is created by AI, because Spotify doesn't have to pay creators if it's just made by their AI farms. And same thing with, I think it's like 75% of the articles written on the internet are now written by AI. I saw some stats, and don't quote me on those, but there is a huge amount of imagery, writing, music, everything that is saturating the World Wide Web. And I remember the first time I ever used the World Wide Web in 1996 in sixth grade, and AOL online dial up. There was a CD, and we had to research something, and I chose to research Atlantis with my, this infinite power of the internet that I'd heard so much about. But there was no websites about Atlantis in 1996, at least that I could find. Maybe they were on the dark web, but they weren't through AOL. And so I kind of gave up on the internet for a while after that. I was like, this isn't going to be anything, as I was 12 years old. But that was probably a good thing. But now it's unavoidable. Pluto in Aquarius is really exposing how much we've come to rely on the digital network of the internet, I would say, is the main component here, as well as the globalized network, the globalized political network. I'd say that Aquarius is, Capricorn, where Pluto just spent the last 20 years, is about structure and hierarchy kind of Saturnian things as it relates to kind of building and like the infrastructure of the world. Pluto is also ruled by Saturn. So Capricorn and Pluto and Aquarius are both ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is again this planet of structure and of boundaries and of building. I think having both of those signs ruled by Saturn really means that you take the kind of building upward of Capricorn, the like mountain climbing goat, and then from there you can build in a horizontal and networked fashion, connecting the different buildings together. And so, Capricorn's more of a like grown-ups are in charge vibe, and that was kind of taken out. We were shown the basement of like the plutonic underworld of the hierarchies and the institutions and the infrastructures that we take for granted over the past 20 years. And now for the next 20 years, it's more about showing us the underbelly, the underworld of how all of those hierarchies were interconnected with each other. And to me, that really speaks to everything that's coming out right now surrounding the Epstein files, surrounding the multipolar world order that a lot of people are talking about, where it's no longer just one nation state on its own, but there's a kind of networked effect of relationships between these different nation states and different oligarchs and powerful people. And so the networks, the Aquarian style dealings of like how hierarchical structures interconnect with each other is a huge theme for the next 18 years. Pluto's final entry into Aquarius started on November 19th, 2024, and it'll be there till January 19th, 2044. So really during this time, it's you don't have to look far to see this, but Pluto is this generational planet that is all about kind of showing what the shadow side of any generation is. And there's a really interesting book that a friend of mine or somebody I met recently came out with about Pluto as it travels through the different generations and what that means for each generation. And I'll link that in the show notes. It's a really interesting book that I've started to read. But it's this one, Pluto and Aquarius generation, is about, the demolition and rebuild. It's death and rebirth is what Pluto is about. So it's shining a light into the basement under the dark soil that we haven't seen before. And then also through doing so, allowing us to rebuild. And this is all about how power moves through groups and systems and technology. So again, communities, platforms, ideologies, science, and the invisible social contracts that we have kind of seen as neutral up until this point, or been made to believe are fairly neutral. Pluto is exposing who benefits, who doesn't, who gets silenced, what freedom costs when everything is interconnected. So power struggles are a theme for Pluto, and that's surrounding data and AI and governance and the architecture of where we belong and how we identify with place. So last time Pluto was in Aquarius was in the late 1700s. Last time Pluto was in the current human design gate that it's in, gate 41, was 1776, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And so, history doesn't copy and paste exactly verbatim. There's some redactions, but it does definitely rhyme. And so in this case, that was the Revolutionary War, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius. So again, none of this is to fearmonger or to, raise any awareness that you don't want to be aware of kind of thing. But I do think that it's important to look at these outer planetary energies and see how they kind of are providing an undercurrent so that we can learn how to work with them. Pluto is going to be in gate 41 in human design all year and also through 2027. So 2 full years in gate 41. And gate 41 is the gate of contraction. it is a really special gate in the human design mandala. It's the first full gate of Aquarius season. There's gate 60. It's the gate that kind of cusps between Capricorn and Aquarius, but now we're in the first full gate. And it moves from, in the gene keys, the shadow of fantasy to the gift of anticipation. And it is kind of putting deep evolutionary pressure on the nature of desire, kind of desire for rebirth. And so it is, when I think of the gate of contraction, I think about, uh, because I'm a mother, I think about birth contractions, the contractions that happen that lead to the birth of a child. And I really think that once I found out that was the start codon in the gene keys, this was the rave new year, the human design new year happens when the sun hits gate 41 every year. Gate 41 is the initiating spark that says something wants to happen. There's pressure that gathers and asks to be released through experience. And so, contractions are not necessarily fun, but they're also the necessary precursor to the birth of something new. It's kind of this process of going through ins and outs and ups and downs of the current reality that we're in. And at the shadow level in the gene keys, that pressure can express as fantasy or restlessness or just a simple dissatisfaction with the present moment. Like, I do not want to be going through contractions. Can't the baby already just be here? And with Pluto in this gate, that fantasy pressure really intensifies through just not wanting to be in this place. And I feel that, you shine the light into the basement with all the worms and all of the dirt of what's been going on, and we're seeing it clearly. And there's a pressure for something new to arise. Like, there's talk about the new world order, or the new earth, new possibilities, and creating a new reality is front of mind for so many people, and for good reason. That is what we have. But it's also, it's easy to lean into the fantasy of that being sooner than it might be possible, that just happening overnight. And so, with contractions, I remember a lot of people being afraid of the pain of contractions in my birthing classes, and thinking about, you just hear about how much pain that is and how long it can go on, and like how it doesn't always progress in a linear fashion. And it's like it can last, for the first time mothers, a lot of people were hearing stories of like 20, 30 hours of this, of labor. And I remember feeling like in my birthing classes that I wasn't getting that much information about what was actually happening in the womb during that time. And I'm I'm like a pop science fanatic. I've always loved reading about science from a level that hasn't required too much expertise. But I really wanted to know, like, what is a contraction? Basically, like, the womb has three different muscle layers, and one is horizontal and one is vertical. And I remember like being able to see a picture of these muscle layers and what was happening as the contractions were happening, like watching a video of that. And I think for some people that might be like too close to home, too much information. But for me, I remember being like, okay, I know what's happening inside my womb by like this miracle of just it just starting. You never know when it's going to happen. I was watching the Bohemian Rhapsody Queen biopic at the movie theater, and right when my first contraction started to happen. And it was this amazing phenomenon of like, whoa, okay, something is happening, and I didn't cause it to happen. And it felt incredibly mystical and magical to me. And then going through the process of contraction, you learn that by surrendering to it, but not falling asleep, not like completely tapping out, not taking a lot of meds necessarily, but by actually surrendering when it is time to rest, and then being ready for when the next one comes. And I definitely didn't plan to tell a birth story on this podcast, but the gate of contraction calls for it. And I remember one thing that really helped me was kind of like being on top of on a bed and in kind of like a child's pose position with a pillow, so that every time the contractions like stopped and the pain eased up a bit, I could instantly kind of relax into that child's pose position and actually let my body rest for the time that I was given to rest before another one hit. And then it was kind of back up on my knees and ready to work with that energy of movement and of dilation and of expansion. And I do think that experience of giving birth can provide some insight into what this deep current of Pluto's energy in Gate 41 is all about, which is a lot about don't stay tense when there's a moment to rest. Like, even though there's so much tension, even though there's so much going on in the world that requires us to be vigilant and alert and aware, it's also like during the contraction period of a new era, you have to rest in between the times of vigilance. So it's like ride the wave and then let it drop you into a floating surrender and then ride another wave. And for the next 18 years with Pluto in Aquarius, and especially the next 2 years with Pluto in Gate 41, I would say that is just top of mind. What I would say is the most important and probably the hardest thing to understand, that rest moment, like rest when the baby's sleeping, which everybody's like, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. I got to fold laundry. I have stuff to do. It's actually like, no, I actually did lean into that when I had a newborn. It was like, sleep when the baby sleeps. Okay. I don't care if the laundry is not folded at this point, because I know that rest is the most important thing when you're dealing with new life. It's just, or the emergence of something brand new. We integrate so much in our sleep and in our rest. So I know it's not easy, but I'd say the gift of Gate 41 is having us feeling like connected to that up and down cycle, those contractions, that is not just a static energy of like, when will this stop? If we release ourselves of the fantasy that is just going to get easier, and we lean into the fact that there will be easy moments and there will be harder moments, and we have that certain underlying anticipation of something meaningful that is forming, knowing that these contractions are actually helping the new world come into being. We're helping birth the new world through going through this period of contractions. It's is Yeah, in the Gene Keys, the gift is anticipation, which is just really um, a certain hope, a certain awareness that's like not just a fantasy, that something new is coming into emergence. We just have to stay with it, that the only way out is through in this case. And so, this next couple years with Pluto in Gate 41 is inviting attention to really focus on and get clear about what it is that you are longing for, putting onto paper, putting into a tangible reality, your vision board, what beautiful world you can imagine. You know, being pregnant, you kind of imagine what your baby's going to look like, but you don't know. You have no idea what it's going to look like, what its personality is going to be. We don't know what the new world, in a few years is going to look like at all. But imagining that and engaging with that reality, making it a reality in your mind, and having a hopeful anticipation for that to help you get through the harder times and then allow you to rest and relax into the process as these contractions continue to occur. So in February 2028, the planet Pluto will leave the gate of contraction and enter gate 19, which is known as the gate of wanting. We'll won't to get too far into that because we'll focus on what we've got right now. But yeah, it's kind of like during this time you want to have maybe fewer. Don't try to do too much. be more devoted to the things that you're already involved with and know what it is that you deeply desire, what kind of world you want to birth into possibility. So, and not having a fantasy about how that's going to happen immediately. So that's the human design energy of Pluto over the next couple years. And then one final thing I want to say about Pluto that I can't pass up because I just think it's very important is the United States Pluto return. So Pluto in 2026 is moving through this gate 41, and that means that it is completing the United States Pluto return, which is calculated from 1776, 250 years ago. We're having the 250th anniversary of the birth of the nation in that way. But also, the Pluto transit, Pluto orbits the sun every 248 years, just about. So if you calculate from the end of the Revolutionary War, when the British formally surrendered at Yorktown in 1781, that puts February 2026 as exactly one Pluto cycle away from that surrender. And we have a lot going on in February 2026, in a month from when I'm talking. And like I said in the beginning, January is a good rest time, a good down period between contractions. So lean into that if you can. But, we're having this official Pluto return. It's been, because Pluto's such a slow moving planet, it's been happening for several years and will happen for several more. But Pluto return really marks the end of a full cycle of power and consequence and identity at the deepest structural level. So, with Pluto in this start codon gate, and I didn't really explain that too well in my last pass about gate 41, but the human design gates are associated with the genetic codons in DNA. And there's one codon in DNA that codes for starting, and it is codon 41. It is this gate in the DNA, and I don't know a ton about that part of the gene keys, but I've always heard it referred to as the start codon and like the new beginning, and it is associated with the new year of the human design system. And so it is kind of like, yeah, the beginning of something new. And so having the United States Pluto return and 150-year empire cycle coming back to that initial start codon gate for the first time is fascinating. It just truly is. Like, wow. It was, when Pluto was last there in the late 17 or 1770s into 1780s. The original desires that made our nation what it was, the birth of the nation, is really stripped of fantasy and brought face to face with lived reality. We're seeing so much of what this nation was founded on come to the light, having that flashlight shine into the basement again. And so, gate 41 as the Pluto return gate asks us what experiences as a collective we're still wanting to have and which long held projections can no longer sustain themselves. And so this phase is really emphasizing reckoning around governance and shared values, what it means to be an American, the emotional contracts and the emotional identity that underpins the national identity. And what has been imagined as the American story, the American dream, is really under pressure to have a rebirth and become something embodied and revised and consciously rechosen instead of just drawing back to like, well, if it's in the Constitution or that's what the founding fathers said. We are at a new point of conception of a new cycle. And that is just the truth of the matter. It's interesting. I've been seeing a lot of videos lately about 250-year empire cycle that a lot of historians and systems theorists have worked out the fact that empires last 250 years on average. And this is a pattern that's observed across multiple civilizations and there's multiple stages through that empire. So founding ideals gradually harden into institutions, and then they peak, and then they get decadent and over leveraged, and then eventually require reorganization. And this has happened all throughout history. And so I'd say these cycles are not prophecies of collapse necessarily, as much as they are descriptions of maturation and reckoning. Around the 2.5 century mark, empires really tend to confront the distance between their original vision and their lived reality of how it's played out, how it's been taken advantage of. And I think so many empires in the past have thought of themselves as forever. Like they, during even into the late stage of their reign, they believe that they're going to last forever. And so we have the United States at this point where we are at our 250-year anniversary of the country. And we've seen this in the fall of the British Empire, the Soviet Union, Roman Empire. There's a list that I'll post in the Substack version of this that is kind of a chart of all of the empires throughout human history and how long they've lasted. And they center around 250 years. So Pluto's return to its revolutionary position in Gate 41 fits this rhythm uncannily well. And it emphasizes not just a structural strain, but a deeper question of desire for the new conception. We're all asking ourselves right now, what kind of experience we want to live and what's can no longer sustain. And so, when you talk about collapse or fall of empire or empires ending, my question with that, whenever it's spoken about, is like, well, nothing ends. It doesn't just, the world doesn't end, right? It's just the type of governance, the type of reign that has been in power for 250 years starts to change and slip, and a new power takes over at that point. And we've seen, or there's a period of a vacuum, and what happens to the leaders versus what happens to the people on the ground. There's a lot of considerations about what can happen at the end of empire, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be one way or another. I think that in certain contexts, different things have happened at the end of the empires, depending on what's going on in the world, the rest of the world. And so at this point, it's not a, final stamp to say, okay, boom, it's over. It is an opportunity to say, what is next, to tap into that, thinking about the baby, thinking about the new birth of the new world. I think more than ever right now, everyone as an individual has more access to information than we ever have had, and to networked connection as well. So it's not just the elites and the powers that be that are connecting in a networked web. It's also the people. Social media and just mass communication, the way it operates, has allowed us to see perspectives from so many different people around the world. And to me, I never take that for granted, how free and open the internet has been to connect me with stories of people from so many different backgrounds that are inspiring, that are uplifting, that are like deeply powerful, that I wouldn't have had access to 20 years ago or in my parents' generation. At all, right? And so it's allowed me to see the unity between people across the world, and what humanity has the potential to be, with all of us having beautiful light in our hearts and the potential to come together with that. And so I do feel that we can't just be like, well, this has happened before. Like, this is exactly like what it was like during Roman times, and the fiddling at the end of the world with the Roman Empire collapsing and burning all around. It's not going to be the same, because the world is different, consciousness is different, and it is truly the first time in history that we've been able to dream up and be connected with that Christ consciousness, or with that Buddhic consciousness, or that inner light that lives within each one of our own selves, and have a network effect to be able to see that spread. So we cannot take that for granted, but it's also not going to go fully away. The network exists. We are in the Pluto and Aquarius age. And so there's also power that is shown, not just underbellies, but also true power within that. So I would say this is a time to dream. This is a time to rest in between those dreams, to let the rest integrate what it is that you're dreaming about and make it real in your body rather than just a fantasy. And that is my Pluto in Aquarius tangent for 2026. I'll take a moment now to move into Neptune and Aries. Neptune and Saturn both entering Aries. Neptune will be in Aries for the next 12 years. And it's been in Pisces for 13 years. Neptune is very at home in Pisces, that watery realm. And entering Aries, Neptune is a little less familiar there. It's like this universal oceanic god in, the realm of Aries, the individualist, kind of seed god. The individual is being remythologized over the next 12 years. And I keep hearing it as like this era of spiritual warriorship and tapping into your individual power and your individual dreams. So Neptune in Aries, starting out this February and on to the next 12 years, will inspire courage and a renewed relationship to our own agency. It's Aries is the ram, Aries is the warrior, Aries is the seed, and that is sprouting up. And it is the spark, the catalyst. It is all of those things. And so Neptune is the planet of dreams and illusions and delusions. And so when you put those two together, it can be, dreamy, big vision about our own inner power, our own potential, that Christ consciousness that is within each one of us, right? But it can also inflame idealism and savior complexes and kind of an over fanatical like dream vision of what your own potential is as an individual. So historically, Neptune's last period in Aries was the 1860s to 1870s. And for you historians out there, you'll know that that was a time that included the Civil War. And again, I'm not saying history will repeat itself, but just good to know these things as they stand, because you'll certainly be hearing about it as it arises if you're follow any astrology content. But it is really about kind of upheaval of identity, having a dream about like what it means to be an American at that point in time in the 1860s. The archetype of the sea god in the warrior sign of the ram is, kind of really bringing a focus onto identity and what we're willing to sacrifice for our ideals, and that can kind of put them on this dreamlike altar. So right now, in 2026, we have that same theme, but we're in a much different time period because the concept of the individual is definitely something that relates to humans. But now we have AI and algorithms and social platforms that are claiming to be individuals too, and shaping our voices and our desires and our attention spans. And so we're kind of coming back to this hero, personal, spiritual warrior, hero mythology on a very personal level. But now, we have these machines that have personalities too, in some way, shape, or form. So heroes and anti-heroes might take some unconventional forms during this time. And I'd say that Neptune in Aries it's super empowering. And I think it's just one of those things of just like, let the power of the vastness of the ocean expand your heart, expand your vision of what your potential is in this world as an individual. And each of us have that individual potential, but just take care to not overinflate and get overly dreamy about that. Got to take one step at a time. And Saturn being in Aries at the same time for the next 3 years is kind of like the training ground the tangible boots on the ground place for Neptune's heroic dreams. So, we've had Saturn and Neptune both in Pisces for the last 3 years, kind of at the end of Neptune's reign in Pisces. So Neptune got to be pretty comfortable in Pisces before Saturn came along in 2023 and was like, "Oh, hey, like I'm here to kind of like put some fences around your dreams." And so the past 3 years might have felt pretty like, what? I thought I was, everything was like, I was spiritually connected. I had all of this figured out. And then suddenly it's like, but what about reality? What about what's really going on? And so a little bit of a downer perhaps on that lofty spiritual identification with Neptune and Saturn in Pisces. And so now it's interesting that we have Saturn and Neptune at the beginning part of Neptune's reign in Aries. So Neptune will be there for 12 years, but Saturn will be there just for the first 2.5, 3. And I think it's pretty good because we're used to having Saturn and Neptune together. We're used to that reality check with our dreams a little bit. But now it's moving into a less of a collective mythologized realm where everything is kind of confusing and oceanic. And then we're now moving into this energy of Aries. Aries is a very energetic sign, has a lot of force, inner willpower. And so the ability to come with both Saturn and Neptune into that space and knowing that it's going to take some work to achieve the dreams of our spiritual warriorship and our ability to change the world from one person at a time. So Saturn again represents structure and consequence and integrity, and Aries is ignition and impulse and the raw will to exist and to move forward. And so together, Saturn and Aries is like a rite of adulthood for identity. And it's this practical practice warriorship. To be a warrior, you must put the time in, the effort in to get stronger, to learn technique. And Saturn is coming and saying, yes, this isn't just like identifying with a dream, it's actually putting the work in to make that dream happen. And so it's about earning our confidence, I'd say. Saturn in Aries isn't just putting the focus on ourselves, navel gazing, but it's actually earned confidence that keeps us making promises to ourselves that we'll keep and holding our boundaries, recognizing the scope of our individuality and not being dramatic about that, but just boundaries will be important. And also really taking step after step to build a life that matches your dreams and your Neptunian values of what your potential is for the rest of this time in this lifetime, right? So it's not about performative bravery. It's not about just being independent for the sake of being independent. It's like do the work to achieve the dream. You are a powerful being. You don't have to give your power away anymore to something higher than yourself. It's almost impossible to give our power away and trust that we're giving it to the right place these days because so many of our institutions and things that we've come to rely on for our entire lives are falling away. And so now it's like, yeah, have that dream of your own internal power, your own individualism. Be humble about it and do your reps. Get to the gym. I am doing a lot of martial arts and qigong right now, and tapping into both the yang and the yin energies of that training. I think training is important over the next few years for sure. And so collectively, dream is meeting discipline and accountability is key. And there will be things during this time of Neptune in Aries where AI and algorithms and the platforms that we use are kind of trying to shape us and shape our individualism towards what the larger powers want that to be. And so Saturn there is really saying, like, Saturn's kind of just like the no bullshit dad that's like, no, I'm not just going to accept these dreams of what people are telling me I can be if I just take this supplement or if I just buy this product. Saturn here, I am grateful for Saturn here in Aries because it's pushing reclamation of authorship of our own lives by having boundaries, by having constraints that protect your inner flame. So similar to everything else I've talked about, I'd say that this upcoming year, just having fewer inputs and clearer commitments to less things and stronger standards for what you want to be and who gets to name who you are. That is really important. Internal agency and authorship can be cultivated in a beautiful way during Saturn in Aries. So say no. Be devotional about your no's. Don't see it as turning somebody down, but seeing it as protecting the light inside of you when you say no. And yeah, be more of a steward when you're talking about leadership. Aries is a very leadership oriented sign. And so more stewardship and less savior complex. And just keep up the work, keep doing the repetitions. Nothing will happen overnight, but Saturn is a builder type of energy. It's structural. It is knows that in order to become a hero, you can't just like wake up and be a warrior, a hero, or overnight, as Neptune and Aries might want us to believe. But Saturn is like you have to build your confidence with action and construct a life that proves who you want to be. So Saturn and Neptune are in gate 25 for the majority of 2026. And gate 25 is the gate of innocence. And it's like this universal love gate. Then they will move into gate 17, which is the gate of opinions later on in the year. But focusing on the conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, the gate of innocence is where that's going to happen. And it is that rebirth energy. It's the spring equinox gate in the wheel of the year where we are born into a new cycle, like the constriction started happening or the contraction started happening in the wheel of the year back in Aquarius season. And then you kind of go through this process of being born. Gate 25 is this gate it's a heart center gate. It's about accepting life as it is because you're innocent to the world. You were just born. It's a newborn energy, a newborn baby energy, the seed that just sprouted out energy, the match that was just lit for the first time energy. And so it can be one of those things that, of course, in any cyclical time frame, one gate or sign will carry the energy of the past sign or the past gate. And so it's coming out of gate 36, where both Neptune and Pisces, or Neptune and Saturn have been in Pisces coming into Aries. Gate 36 is the gate of crisis. I see it as the birth canal gate. It's like where you actually have to like do the work to and overcome the crisis to get through. And then it's just this like, moment where you're born. And gate 25 is birth. It is the baby lamb. I think of it as just like that innocent baby lamb who's just like wide-eyed to the world, accepting of everything, meeting life as a new cycle without any distortion or agenda or hurt. But at its shadow level, it does have a certain guardedness. A baby lamb is not safe necessarily because it's carrying the collective conscious of past cycles and saying, oh, wait, there's something worrisome. Like I want to trust that I can accept this new reality, but there's something that I'm not quite sure about with that. And so it's this really powerful energy. I know several people with their birthday in gate 25 who are just the most loving, universally loving, caring, deep people, but also people who get hurt frequently when the universe or the world is harsh, and they just it's so sad. It's like sadder than anything else that like the world would show its claws when you're just like, I'm just here to like be loving and experience everything and be fresh and new. And so both Neptune and Saturn in that gate when they're meeting up feels really poignant. Like we're carrying all of this pain and we really want this new beginning, and it is here. And leaning into that innocence and into the beauty of universal love, and knowing that like there is a deeper current of love than one we can see. It's very much the energy of the moment. And so when they move into gate 17 at different times throughout the year, but Saturn and Neptune will move into gate 17, the second gate of Aries, which is when our attention shifts towards opinions and beliefs and perspectives. And its gift is farsightedness, which allows us to see hope and see patterns in different people's opinions without locking them into certainty. Instead of clinging to rigid opinions, it's like the baby lamb's growing up a little bit and is kind of going around like buying and bleeding and being like, oh, hey, like, what are you up to? What are you up to? Exploring the world in a big way, kind of excited and curious about what everybody thinks about things. And that is something that I think we can look forward to a little bit, as far as just it's a very networked energy. Even though it's individualistic and it's about the ram energy, it still is connected to seeing patterns amongst all the different individuals as they come together, with a certain innocence that still lingers from gate 25. So that is Neptune and Saturn in Aries, in this universal love innocence place of the chart that brings a little bit of hope. It's like we can't be sure exactly what that's going to bring, because it is the beginning of a new cycle. It's that birth and being like, whoa, my baby's hair is blonde, not brown, or like, wow, like, they look different. It's like you can't know before it comes. And I think that anybody tries to tell you that they know exactly what this conjunction and that time will be like it's just not possible. It's been thousands and thousands of years since these two planets have come together at the 0 point of the zodiac. So we will stay innocently open-minded to what will come, but know that holding on to our innocence and our hope is paramount, and not be too disappointed when there still are lingering things about the old world that are continuing to exist. So the next outer planet that I want to talk about is Uranus moving into Gemini for the next 7 years this year. And this reading is going to be very long. And so you listen to it in multiple chunks if you're not already. But I just thought it was important to talk about all of these in depth and say whatever tangents are coming to my mind. So thank you for listening. Uranus, the fun velociraptor, the fun lightning bolt thrower of the zodiac, of the planetary realm, is going to be in Gemini, the sign of the twins, the chatty twins, for the next 7 years. And I like to think of Gemini as pollinators. It's the season of early summer when you have a lot of pollinators coming out and spreading pollen between different flowers. And that is perfect for Gemini, the bee or butterfly energy, hummingbird energy that Gemini is associated with, being in a local environment, kind of flitting in between lots of different ideas and lots of concepts and lots of people. And so Uranus, this lightning bolt kind of disruptor energy, is going to come into this area of the chart, where this area of the sky for 7 years, where it is shaking up how we communicate. Uranus has been in Taurus for the past 7 years, and that was Uranus, the sky daddy, the great lord of the sky with the lightning bolt in hand. Uranus was shaking up Taurus, which is all about the meadow, the sitting bull, quietly sitting in a meadow, enjoying just the lovely spring before all that pollination starts to happen. Taurus is about stability. The bull really represents material security and stability and tangible, tactile things, luxuries. And so all of that material resources have been shaken up over the past 7 years in a big way. Food security, water security, the basic needs have been really, yeah, kind of just shaken up. And there's been kind of, I see a Uranus as like this strobe light energy that really kind of shows us what's not stable within all of these systems, really like body sovereignty, what we collectively value as groups, land and food systems, like all of these things. And so I think a lot of people might feel a bit of like unclenching as Uranus leaves Taurus and stops shining that strobe light on those areas that's been we've become aware of so much during that time. But Gemini, is a different vibe completely. And Uranus will be there until 2033, which really brings an electric current into, yeah, how we communicate, how we consume energy and information, how we're educated, how trade works, interchange between different places, how media works. So, again, if you're not seeing an AI related theme in all of this astrology, you probably are by now. Like communication, education, trade, all of these things are going to be shaken up by this kind of like, lightning bolt, like electrical charge energy. And I think that Uranus feels to me like it fits in Gemini a little bit better. Gemini is very like it's an air sign. There's lots of movement in between places, and electricity, lightning bolt of electrical current also moves through things. And so I think it might have felt a little more jarring in Taurus, where it's like a very still and stable sign, but moving into a very movement oriented sign, Uranus, I think will still feel like, oh, well, I'm seeing things I never thought I'd see. I'm like, there's some disruption. I'm shocked, but it's definitely in an area that we've already seen a lot of movement over the past several years, decades, generations. It's like communication and education are always changing, but we'll definitely see bigger changes there. And throughout history, Uranus and Gemini has tended to correlate with revolutions. The movement gets moving. And so there's rapid shifts in how we think and how we connect and what counts as true for us. And so people are feeling energized to talk about things and to be in the mix with Uranus and Gemini. So that is revolutionary one way or another. In the gene keys in human design, Uranus will move from gate 8 to gate 20 to gate 16 during the year of 2026. And it starts in gate 8, which is the gate of contribution. And this is the last gate of Taurus that it's going to be in for the beginning of the year before it moves into Gemini. And it's kind of that final gate of Taurus being about how we show our and express our material world. Its gift is style, and it's about expressing our own lived tangible material world without comparison, just being our full selves. And when we enter gate 20, Gemini, the first gate of Gemini, and Uranus will enter Gemini on April 25th, 2026. I had to look that up. And that's when it enters gate 20 as well. So gate 20 is the gate of the now. Its shadow is superficiality and its gift is self-assurance. And it's all about the present moment. Uranus moving into Gemini is saying, like, what is here in front of me right now? I'm a little bee. What flower am I currently on that I can pollinate? Rather than looking at like the whole vast landscape. It's like in this present moment, how can I be my fullest self? And I think that that's something to keep in mind with Uranus entering Gemini, that we don't want to rush around between things. It can feel like just a hyper electric jolt of energy coming through, being like, I gotta do something. I gotta move. I gotta talk to somebody. I gotta do something. But there is something to like the being self-assured about wherever I'm in the present moment is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And not needing to perform, not needing to rush around, but just saying, okay, I'm going to be present, and wherever that present moment takes me will be a new present moment. And there's lots of flowers to pollinate, but I don't have to try to do them all at once. So, when we reach June, that's April, gate 20, and the present moment is important. And then from June onward, Uranus is going to be in gate 16, and that is the gate of skills. And so it's really about building up our skill set for this new world. It's definitely not about a slow progression like a Capricorn type skill. It's a gift of being versatile and developing a multitude of different skills through practice and repetition and like doing what we love, just doing the same thing that keeps calling to us again and again, so that over time our skills become something truly ingrained in our body. And really, Castor and Pollux, who are the Greek myth of Gemini, are these twin brothers who have so many skills. They're like horsemen, and they like sail the seven seas, and they're doing everything. They have like so many skills. And so I think of Gemini as a very skilled sign if it just continues to build a versatile skill set. So be in the present moment, focus on where you are in the spring with Uranus and Gemini. And then once the summer hits, you'll know which flowers you want to go back to, what's calling your name, that can become a skill through practice. So that is all of the outer planets except for Jupiter. And what's cool about Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune and Saturn for a while, but Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune for a longer while, is these three outermost planets are making a configuration in the sky this year that they've been in since 2025. And it's called a mini triangle or a magic triangle. And it is this harmonious aspect between Pluto and Aquarius, Uranus and Gemini, and Neptune and Aries. And so once all three of these click into their new signs, we've had kind of a semblance of this for a while, this triangle. But once Uranus moves into Gemini and Neptune and Saturn move into Aries, there's going to be an exact supportive geometry with Pluto trining Uranus and Neptune sextile to both Pluto and Uranus, making a little miniature magic triangle. And this is something that has not been seen for generations. And having those smooth flowing aspects between these three outer planets that are in such potent, let's talk about it again. We have Pluto in the gate of contraction. We have Aries in the gate of birth, an innocent lamb coming into the world. And then we have Uranus in the gate of the present moment, and being in the now. And so there's flowing energy between all of those, between like starting something new, starting something fresh, not getting ahead of ourselves, like be here now. And to quote Ram Dass. And so I do think that this is a really potent, trines and sextiles are harmonious influences. They just mean the energy flows throughout the solar system very smoothly, without tension, without combat between these planets. And so I'm loving the connection between the three gates that are there right now. And I think that it'll really favor innovations that spread through networks. It'll favor new tools. It'll favor being presently aware of what's going on and not having fantasies about what could be. And it'll favor love, universal love, even though that might seem innocent, just like leading with love. That's kind of that center point of that triangle is gate 25, where Saturn and Neptune are. And so air and fire are working together here. Air definitely spreads fire. And so it can be, again, fire horse year. It's fast moving energy. It could feel overwhelming. So remember to rest and take those breathers between contractions, but know that the connections that this aspect is making of this triangle is beautiful, not gentle, but beautiful. And it's like it's got energy built in. We don't have to bring as much, dig it out of the dirt. It's already flowing. So that's a pretty cool thing. And then we have one final outer planet to talk about, or Jupiter is known as a social planet, not an outer planet per se. It's kind of in between the inners and the outers. But it's, massive, massive, very important planet. And it is entering Leo. It is leaving Cancer in July 2026 and entering the sign of the lion, the lion's pride rock, and that will shift the collective mood in a noticeable way. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, known as the Great Benefic. It is the hugest planet in the solar system, a gas giant. It is Zeus in Greek mythology, and it is this really just powerful energy that we are reckoning with in 2026. And Cancer, Jupiter loves being in Cancer. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So whatever has happened over the past year, wherever Jupiter was landing in your chart, wherever Cancer is, might have felt a certain sweetness about the kind of your internal workings, your home. And now it's entering Leo, and it's bringing warmth and visibility and that lion's roar confidence back into the center stage. We had a kind of inward focused year of kind of emotional growth in Cancer. And Cancer is all about the mother, the moon, home, memory, care, belonging. And so Jupiter could have expanded those themes in your life over the past year. And now it's expanding themes of self-expression and creativity that are related to Leo, circulation, the heart energy that I've talked about a lot here today. So Leo rules the heart, and Cancer, and Jupiter in Leo will be returning an emphasis to that heart-centered space. So with Jupiter in Cancer over the past year, from summer 2024 to summer 2025 to 2026, our inner life might have been strengthened, our roots and our emotional intelligence. And now it's kind of this like coming out party with like having gone through an emotional fortification or expansion of whatever's going on there. We're now kind of going to see people that are more willing to take up space and share their voice and get on stage and invest their energy in what feels meaningful. Yeah, joy is a big part of Jupiter in Leo, I would say. And Jupiter isn't always like the greatest. It's not like, oh, lucky wherever it touches. It can also just mean like expansive, like it expands whatever it touches. So if there's something that is not feeling on, or something feeling a little off, that can also be expanded. But generally, I would say Jupiter in Leo feels like an exciting transit for me. I am a Leo rising, so it'll be in my first house. And it's just going to return that kind of more outward amplification towards themes of leadership and artistry and play. And that, again, that theme of self-authorship, of tuning into your own heart. So yeah, it feels like a confidence boost after a time of like a lot of inward introspection over the past year. So I'd say, within the larger context of this year, 2026, Jupiter in Leo is adding fuel to the fire that is already burning. Fire sign Leo. It's different than that Aries spark. Leo's more like the hearth that we just keep tending, and the fire keeps getting bigger, bringing people together. And so we have Saturn in Aries saying like, okay, get to work, do your reps, get to the gym. We have Neptune in Aries saying like, have the big dream, like don't lose sight of your big dream and what can blaze new trails. And then we have Leo and a Leo fire sign bringing courage and moments of pure delight and willingness to be seen and outward self-expression, art that's really going to come to the table in building this new world. So the fire signs are alive here, and that's pretty awesome. Jupiter will be going through all of the Leo gates in 2026 and then retrograding back through some of them and then going forward again into 2027. But it will hit all of the gates, human design gates of Leo season in 2026. So I will definitely do a post about that and not get too into it right now. But the Leo season gates are all about leadership and I mean mostly, yeah, about storytelling and leadership and engagement and reflection and devotion and themes that you would think of with Leo. So as the sun, as Jupiter moves through all of these gates, I'll definitely be hitting on those here on the podcast and talking about that because they'll bring a certain specificity to the type of Leo energy that we'll see at that time being expanded. With Leo moving into Leo, with Jupiter moving into Leo, we do have that mini triangle, magic triangle of the outer planets that I was talking about actually becoming like adding on to that triangle to turn into what looks like a cradle or a basket. We will have Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter all at around 4 degrees of their signs in July 2026. And that's going to create not only that triangle, but add on like another leg to it that looks like a basket. And this is a very, very rare configuration. And it's known as the basket of Barbeau. Barbeau was a French astrologer, Michael Barbeau, who wrote about these multi-planet harmonic structures and signatures of this accelerated collective reorganization back in the day. This is the astrologer who called the COVID pandemic. He's claimed, said it was going to happen about 20 years before it did, and with pretty striking accuracy and detail. And so what he says about this basket or cradle for this specific moment in 2026 is that it will accompany a reversal of global crises. It's like the most optimistic and beautiful thing to put our North Star into. He said about 2026 that the New World civilization, the beginnings of which appeared around the year 2000, is in full flight in 2026. This entry into the second quarter of the century bears the stamp of the achievement of a new age of humanity. The central and harmonic position of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is especially expressive of a promotion of the lower strata of the world's population, a significant rise in the standard of living of the poor, a victory over misery won in unprecedented solidarity. So July 2026, we have these exact configuration, 4 degrees of Aquarius, 4 degrees of Aries, 4 degrees of Gemini, and 4 degrees of Leo, 2 fire signs, 2 air signs coming together in this harmony, this basket cradle harmony. I've posted a picture of it on the Substack, livingthespiral.com, if you want to see what it looks like. But it is, again, this harmonious, free-flowing energy with all of these planets in the same degree that is kind of activated by Jupiter, which is the more quickly moving planet that kind of lights up this triangle configuration that the slower planets have already been in for months. And so that like activation of it with this final planet really results in like mid-July. There's going to be multiple days where this is exact. And it might be just a beautiful time to circle on your calendar around July 18th and the days surrounding that in 2026 that will have, the free-flowing energy between kind of these supportive aspects where ideas might circulate faster and networks respond to that circulation, and actions that are taken during this window might propagate outward more readily. We're again talking about the Aquarian themes of technology and systems and government and collective power. We're talking about information, media, and communication with Uranus and Gemini. We're talking about idealism and vision and the spiritual warriorship and mythic charge of identity with Neptune and Aries. And then we're talking about confidence, leadership, self-expression, art, visibility with Jupiter and Leo all coming together. So this combination really could support bold experimentation and like coordinated movement between people. And it really magnifies influence. Yeah, it's kind of like if you're prepared for this time, take advantage of it. Be clear about how your heart is showing up, the structures that you're building leading up to July, because there's this powerful moment in July. And I was watching a video by the astrologer S.J. Anderson on YouTube, and he mentioned that this aspect was interesting because the Odyssey film, this new epic film directed by Christopher Nolan, is scheduled for release right during this window in mid-July. And, Christopher Nolan's films often explore big picture themes of time and nonlinear cause and effect and identity. And the Odyssey is this story about, the origins of so much of our collective mythology, where there's this journey unfolding over time, where meaning is emerging through persistence and initiative rather than just letting it happen. And it seems like this basket of Barbeau, this cradle moment, is a great time for something like that to come out, because it's like reminding us what humanity has gone through already, and where these myths are coming from, seeing that on the screen. So just thought that was an interesting add-on. And I don't have much more. I mean, the year is certainly top heavy. It is loaded in the first half of the year. There's less happening. There's the Mercury retrogrades and eclipses that I already mentioned happening on the later half of the year. But there's most of the big outer planet changes are happening in the first half. And so that's what I really wanted to focus on today, because they will affect us all year and for several years going forward. But we do have one more thing to talk about, which is a Venus retrograde to recalibrate our values in October and November. And Venus retrogrades happen every couple of years. And this time, the planet of love and harmony and values is starting its retrograde in Scorpio and moving back into Libra from early October to mid-November. And so I would say that carve that time out in your calendar for a time to reflect on your values, reflect on what you love, reflect on who you love, reflect on how you love, what you desire, and what you prioritize. And know that that's going to be time of reconsidering and reworking those themes. It's a great time to ask in the fall thereafter. So much has happened. So many contractions have happened in the early part of 2026, to take some space, take some time in October and November to ask, kind of get back with yourself and say, what have I been calling desire when it's really fear or habit? What do I really want? What do I actually want to work for? And with all this energy flowing around, let me just like take a beat and say, what do I want? What do I value? And happening in Scorpio, Venus generally is valuing truth in intimacy, truth in money, truth in the types of things that we spend a lot of time in and in our relationships and in our careers. It's kind of like Scorpio is asking for us to find truth within that. And then moving back into Libra, where Venus is at home, Venus is really focused on reciprocity and harmony and justice and fairness. And so this retrograde time can really bring old relationships and old creative threads and old wounds surrounding these things back to the table so that we can work with them and find greater clarity. So another time, in the fall there surrounding our values. And I think that's perfect timing within this fast moving year to have that built in and to know that in October and November, it's a bit of a slowdown that allows us to get really clear on like, what are we moving around so fast for? Like, are we riding towards the right horizon for sure on this fire horse? Or do we need to kind of like course correct a little bit? And so that's what that time is about. So to conclude here, thank you for being with me for all this time. If you've made it this far, it's been really just fun riffing and talking about this for my own purposes, but it's really nice to have you here. And I would love to hear how you're feeling about any of these transits or your thoughts about them in the comments. You can always find me on livingthespiral.com for this podcast and the written transcripts as well. I'll just close by kind of isolating a core theme of 2026, which feels like it's the end of drifting and the beginning of heart-centered sovereignty. And, with Neptune having been in Pisces since 2011, where we just were in a field of imagination, a field of potential and possibility, we are now shifting, Saturn and Neptune into Aries, where we are taking whatever possibilities and whatever grand gestures that we felt during the past 11 or 15 years and putting them into a real lived, individualized, how do I show up in this moment? And, as the year of the fire horse, this animal that's associated with vitality and speed and the instinct to move and run towards the horizon. Fire horse years amplify momentum and they highlight where our energy wants to go. And so we have to be ready for motion and for action, especially in the first half of this year. All of these different human design gates, Pluto in gate 41 is really putting pressure on our desires for a new world and compressing our imagination into experiences that we want to play out, riding those contractions. Saturn and Neptune in gate 25 is the gate of innocence, and it really emphasizes sincerity and leading with love and aligning ourselves with our inner authority. And then Uranus in gate 20 is about power of now, be here now, see what wants to happen in the present moment so that you can then build skills surrounding what you're being called to on a personal level. Then, Jupiter coming through this leadership, self-expression, creativity gate coming out of the Cancer shell and into the limelight a little bit. So all of these stories and the ways that they're harmonizing with each other will really show us that direction matters this year. Doing the reps in the gym, the repetition, the skill building matters. The heart centeredness matters. The love and the confidence in your own personhood matters. And kind of drifting or externalizing our power, outsourcing our power to larger organizations or institutions is not really where we want to be in this moment, just with everything that's happening. And so with so many outer planetary changes happening, the storyline of the world is really just getting rearranged a bit. But, having that attention to the fact that there will be something newborn and that the best thing you can be is an active participant in helping that new reality to be birthed, and that nothing you do is too small. We can't do it all. We can't be everywhere at once, pollinating all the flowers at the same time. We can just make a choice to which horizon we're riding towards, who we're collaborating with, and getting opinions from, when we need to focus on our own boundaries and our own sovereignty so that we can protect our own hearts. All of these things in conjunction really become defining of this year. And I think there's a lot to look forward to, even though we're in the midst of so much change. it's definitely a year where we can take the reins and learn how to ride a little bit better. So, thank you for being here on Living the Spiral. Again, I'm Alison Dale, and I would love to hear from you. Anything that's showing up for you this year. I do offer human design and astrology readings about finding your place within this larger landscape and how these transits will show up for you. And my website is at hearthandspiral.com, where you can book readings. I also do group and one on one breathwork sessions to allow a lot of this information to land in the body and not just take up so much space in the mind. So, I recommend, after so much information download here, to take a few moments to take some breaths. Again, my favorite is the physiological sigh, where you breathe in through the nose, hold it at the top for a minute, and then sigh it out audibly through the mouth, dropping your shoulders. And just doing that a few times, anytime throughout the day, can be so helpful to really allow your ribs and your belly to expand and allow a little bit more embodiment back into a highly information dense year, regardless of whether you listen to this whole thing or not. So stay tuned for some more interviews talking about these big picture changes, some more practical and tangible things about how to survive and thrive through the upcoming changes of the next years. I'll be posting a lot more about that type of strategy. And again, thanks for being here. Any likes, hearts, shares are greatly appreciated, as this is a labor of love. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.